it'd be interesting to see how that all.
That's a good point. This is at least a 3-year plan.
Right.
So this will definitely be over the 20 years and I work this into it.
May I say something to that, Richard, too? I mean, we haven't even started,
Right.
but I can imagine that there are some things, one is, how do we respond in a dynamic way to the diversity of language in scope? So you can begin to think already, well, there might be more interpretation, there might be more translation, there might be something technology-wise, and those might be really specific to that. And then there are other things, I know with my staff that are working on different programs, and Amy would know more than, kind of across the library, but we're thinking about when we do programs themselves, it's not necessarily, we may move more because of strategic plan to say, we want to do more for connection and belonging. The programs that we're doing now, we're saying, what is it? Where are we seeing those connections happening? What's happening in the room that we are doing that creates that opportunity? And I even think when you look through some of the bullet points in the plan, like the technology program where Neil did more of a talk through of security issues in technology and not like, we're going to have a class.
Right.
He did it where people were sharing what they've experienced, right? And so that brings people together. So in some of it, and whether we track that like things that were specific events or specific initiatives that fall under a current priority, I think there will also be like this big long list where we're also nudging the way we do maybe everything so that it all fits a little bit more.
And I think that that's a really good, really strong perspective of evaluating what we're currently doing and how we can take the things that we have and tweaking them just that little bit, right? Instead of having to overhaul things or throw things out and then put new things in. We're doing a lot of amazing things right now, but you just tweak it just a little bit and it can really just connect a little bit more to those strategic plans.
Comments, observations, questions?
I love the TikTok video that one It was amazing. It was really cool.
I was astonished by it.
I
thought,
Awesome.
like, what is this? I didn't even understand it at first.
Could have been a commercial for our library. I mean, it was really
I
fantastic.
think I commented to Jane, our communications and education manager. She shared it with me. I'm not on TikTok, so she shared it with me. And I thought it's something that we could have written, like in a script, what I mean? So like that's how well the person understood us. And also I was encouraged by it because for an outsider to come into the library and for the design of the services and the spaces to be apparent with our intent was really encouraging for me. So, yeah.
That's what I was blown away. I mean, they highlighted the business center here. They showed the labs. They had, the display of the book. I mean, it was really great.
I know, I need to move this person because I
Yeah.
need to move this person.
No, you might have to get on TikTok.
I just have one other comment. I was so moved by all of the examples of the ways that the strategic plan is already coming into focus. And just like the TikTok example, there was another example of someone from the community volunteering or was it a library staff, somebody identifying African fiction and then working with a community member to blog it or promote it on social media and tag the library. And those types of organic relationships that highlight what the library does and is also what that person's interested in, like it's just such a sweet match and also replicable and scalable in terms of like, using that as a model and saying, we did it with this, we could do it with children's lit, we could do it with, I know it's a lot to manage, but just knowing that that's there as like a seed planted of a way of engaging just really struck me as really inspiring because it was mutual and elevated a love of reading and highlighting books that someone may not, think immediately to come across. So that there were many other, I took notes on other examples of stuff that lit me up, but that really stood out to me as something that was inspiring and replicable down the road.
I think I appreciate you mentioning that, and the beauty, I think, is that that kind of interaction happens really frequently. We might not
Yeah.
capture every little moment
Right.
of interaction with each person, but when we do, it's just a representation of many of them.
Yeah.
Any comments, questions? If not, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. Page 72, quarterly investment update. Allison, anything you want
Okay, I just wanted to check on the owl. That's okay.
to? We're okay?
Yeah.
Just want to move it a little bit in the middle. That's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Page 72, quarterly investment update. Allison, anything?
I guess in summary, we're, doing pretty well with our interest, on the reserve accounts. We have a healthy reserve as expected, and, we're happy with the numbers.
Comments or questions for Allison? No, then I think we can just move on to this.
That's what you can.
All right. This is to our guest tonight. Discussion of the Petty Auditorium. Let me ask you, Colleen, is there any way you can bring the diagram up on the screen there?
And I just want to note that Josh Campanelli, our construction manager, and Alex McLean, Andrew's associate at ABA, is all both online. So.
Great. Thank you.
I can hear you.
Richard, you want
Yeah,
If I bring just the diagram on screen, we're not gonna be able to see them, that's okay.
we can hear them though, still.
Of course.
Yeah, I don't think we need Alex and Josh on the screen unless they're speaking, but they can chime in if we have them drawing as well. So, yeah, I think my memo hopefully explains what we've done since the last meeting. We really took the input, which we really appreciated from the board at the December meeting. When we first started discussing this project in more detail and examined other ways of expanding the handicap accessible area with Andrew and the staff and Andrew can speak more about that design process and the considerations that he and his staff were kind of going through as they were looking at the drawings. But as I mentioned in my memo and also my email to you, I believe that we have a viable way forward that will benefit many people in our community, will provide a more comfortable experience overall of the Petty with lighting, much needed lighting improvements, much needed AV upgrades. We have a platform that will be extended that will accommodate more people comfortably in various configurations. We'll have new flooring. We would have a hearing loop installed. We would just provide the ability, even with the AV upgrade, to extend our viewing of whatever's happening on stage to it outside the Petty more easily. So there's a lot of benefits to this this project. We made a point last month also to share that the Petty is such an important piece of the puzzle for us, and we really didn't take it on as part of the first and second floor project because there were a lot of elements that we needed to look at, and we wanted to move forward with the rest of the project and came back had to carefully look at the AV, the lighting, the flooring, the seating, so. We think we're ready to move forward. We would invite the board's input, obviously, and questions and comments. Keep in mind, and Andrew can speak on this too, perhaps the design process is actually hasn't really started, right? I mean, it's maybe scratched the surface, but really hiring Andrew for this project would entail an entire design phase where they will really go to work on this in even more detail than they already have and refine it. So at this point, what I'm really looking for is more of a general approval of the green lighting us moving forward on pursuing the design phase and the preparation of construction documents, bidding out the project. And then at that point, we would bring the bids back to the board for consideration and ask the board to approve the bid package that was recommended in order to move forward with the project in the summer. So this is merely asking, can we move forward with the work that would be required to bring us to the place where we can even consider construction bids. So Andrew, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to tee that up for you and you can say whatever you want to. Design process and everything else.
Sure.
You should think about.
Sure, thank you, Richard. Yeah, I suppose the first thing I'd like to mention is the process. Because should we work together on the petty, the process will be very much like how we work together on the first and second floor, and then subsequently on the third floor. We start by really getting deep into the existing petty, the conditions, understand what the hard parameters are, what some of the soft parameters are, and then work very closely with Richard, Laura, and the full team on what are all the goals. And the one thing I'd like to add to your list of kind of objectives is for the petty would be flexibility of use, because we did some time ago talk to various team leaders from the library. And one of the things I took away from it was, while the petty presents itself as an auditorium with a stage, it actually is used in all sorts of ways. And then, so I think one of the things, should we start the design process, is to really go deeply into what are all those ways that are either foreseen or already happened, or what are the ways that maybe we haven't anticipated or you haven't anticipated. And we want to design that flexibility into the auditorium as well. So it's really, the design process is starts with a lot of discussion, just as we did with the library, a lot of observation, seeing how spaces are used, talking to everybody, and then kind of filtering that back into the plans, the technology, all the other consultant parameters that we have to figure out together. So that's the process. It's iterative. There's a lot of discussion, and there's a lot of opportunity as it goes along to find the best solutions and opportunities. So as you said, Richard, where we are today is first a kind of cursory look to see what we think can be done. But it's not a foregone conclusion that it's the only opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so where we've started, and this is the existing plan here, is to draw up what is there. And one of the first things we've learned is that the cross aisle, that is the, I don't know, sorry, there we go. You could put the existing plan, that's great. So the cross aisle, which is the connecting space behind where the wheelchairs are drawn. This is how it is now. If there were wheelchairs and people accompanying, the cross aisle is too narrow. It's tight, and the cross aisle is important for people to be able to move not just down the steps, but also across the auditorium, filter to either exit as you leave, or come in and then kind of filter in through the auditorium. So one of the first objectives that we think needs to be accomplished or was studied and then accomplished, is to create a bigger cross aisle. This is a kind of safety issue, but it's also more than that, just a kind of ease of movement and being able to invite people in. Then a next goal is to create better space for, on the flat area adjacent to this cross aisle, better space for accessible occupancy. And that could be people with walkers, people with strollers, people in wheelchairs, wanting to increase that space, allow for more flexibility of use. And then other issues that are going to be studied in depth would be how to maximize the sight lines. That is the view that everybody has from their respective seats. So any changes that we might make to the flat area actually will have an impact on what people see if you're seated both behind the flat area, the cross aisle. So we don't want to compromise those sight lines. So it's really a balancing. The study going forward is going to be this kind of testing how to maximize usable space, create safer, more flexible space, and not compromise sight lines, not unduly eliminate seats, because the trade-off of more flat area is to eliminate rows of seats. And so there's a balance of having maximum number of possible seats, maximum number of flexible flat area, better sight lines. And that's really where we are. And in this process to date, we have, if you go to the next, please. Great. So what we call test fit one. This is showing extending the flat area, which is to the left of where it says 3 foot, extending that out 1 row, making a wider area there, a wider platform. We feel at this point, this is promising. There's the necessary cross aisle. There's significantly more flat area for wheelchairs, walkers, or chairs for that matter. It can be a combination of all of that. And there'll be a total of 170 seats in this configuration. We think the sight lines in this layout are good. They're not compromised. So anybody would have a good seat in the house. And we went to another test fit 2. Thank you. Which is showing extending the flat area out 2 by 2 aisles. And we feel that at this point, we're starting to shift the general sight lines of the patty, and we're starting to cut into perhaps the right balance between, number of seats. So our conclusion so far, where we've arrived is the test fit 1. It seems the most promising. But like I said in the introduction, we're not like locked into anything yet. It's just really, this is getting us to a starting point.
Is it the case in 2, we're losing 30 seats?
Yes.
And in the other one?
Because each row is 15 seats.
Okay.
As the petty's currently used.
And in the test fit 1, we're losing just 15.
That's
Is
right.
that right? Okay.
That's right.
And in your drawings, you have variations on test fit 1 where we talked a lot about, so what are the different combinations or scenarios of, because it might be unlikely that we have, completely the entire space taken up by people who want to remain in their wheelchairs in that platform, or a lot of recent feedback from and kind of observation from programs has been that when people come in, they prefer to use our seats, but they just need to be able to get to that seat, right? So whether it's with a walker or a wheelchair, and then they sit down on the seating that we normally have in our seating area. So we try to show variations of what might be possible. Obviously, there are infinite number of, or not infinite, but there are other combinations of seating arrangements that could be possible in a larger area where people might just be all sitting in our regular seats with the strollers, walkers, wheelchairs like tucked behind or outside of the patio with by a companion. So we're trying to show a mix of different options to show that it's not just like the sheer number of wheelchairs that could be fit, but the potential combinations of other types of seating arrangements.
And if we go back to the original test fit one, please, then the next, perfect, thanks. So to build on Richard's point about seating and test fit. So what we're showing here is alternating wheelchair and then a seat for somebody accompanying that person in the wheelchair. And we're showing this because this is a kind of stipulated seating arrangement by code. This is the test fit that we have to provide, right? But this is the ideal. And experience is the real sometimes is different in that, not in that it's a compromise, it's just that people elect to use the space differently. So sometimes perhaps somebody in a wheelchair doesn't have somebody accompanying them, or the person who's accompanying them sits behind or sits elsewhere. And that frees up space for another walker, for example. So what this test fit is really just kind of taking the code plan stipulations and showing it. So let's call it the worst case.
Mm-hmm.
The best case might be that there's more room. I think there is more room for different configurations.
Amy, can you talk a little bit about what we chatted about before, about the possibilities that would be possible when, or kind of given to us with the AV upgrade and extending the viewing outside of it? Because I think that was.
Yeah, so our current AV setup allows an like sound carryover and projection into the Radmacher. It's not great because the equipment is not great. And that's been on our radar in talking with our AV consultant about this project. So it's already built into the AV package, the ability that the technology in the auditorium, we would be able to effectively view what's happening and hear what's happening in the auditorium, not only in the Radmacher, but also the ability on some of the other screens in the library, including the one immediately outside of the Petty Auditorium.
Is that big slot here?
Yeah, so that also becomes not only a larger area with maximum accessibility, but also a more accessible overflow for something that's really popular, which we've had a handful of times in the past.
And I think that's a form of accommodation as well.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of different ways we can get at this, but I wanted to just make sure the board knew that, saw that we're taking that feedback from the December meeting really seriously and really trying our best to be thoughtful about accessibility and in multiple forms, right? And expanding that. So.
It's very exciting, Amy, what you just shared, because we are a community hub. And I'm hearing everybody talk about being nimble, being agile, you know, and we don't know yet what we're going to use the auditorium for, but I know it's going to be for our own programming and for community partners. And it's exciting to imagine, you know, having more flexibility in all these ways we're talking about to accommodate all kinds of things that may come up in the future. So that's great.
In terms of the budget, I didn't get into it much, but on page 76, you'll see a preliminary budget that is provided by SMC, and Josh is on the call too if you have any questions about that. But essentially, it includes a $45,000 construction contingency. So as Andrew and Alex and just go and get into the design phase more. if there are things that come up that we want to modify in terms of the scope of the plans of the project, then that money can be used to absorb those costs as well. If there are additional costs, so that's the typical contingency budgeted for any of the projects that we worked on with SMC and Andrew. We've had that contingency and it's been really beneficial for us. And in terms of available funds, Allison and I have kind of poured over those numbers as well, and we feel confident that after the conclusion of this current fiscal year and the conclusion of both the chiller project and the third floor renovation project, our reserve fund, of course, will be decreased, during the course of the remainder of the fiscal year because of those two projects. But we should have enough there with possible transfer of reserve money from the operating fund to the reserve fund after the fiscal year ends, where we can pay for this project and still be above that threshold of 5 months operating expenditures, the reserve fund. So that's really important to us as well. So we looked over those numbers, a lot to make sure that we were confident and safe.
Can you advise why there's no permit costs? I don't quite understand that.
The village has been gracious enough to waive those for us, so for all our construction projects thus far.
Okay.
So it's, I guess, the benefit of having a really strong relationship with we're a taxing body, so we're very appreciative of that. Those are not
That's why I want to double check.
Yeah.
Before I was like, well, really?
Amy, can we go back to wheelchairs here? So last month, you were saying currently you can fit in 5 wheelchairs, but that wasn't enough, and that we approved 10, space for 10. Are you now saying that the 5 would be enough if you can use the outer area with the screens and
So, yes, so after the December meeting, I went in to the Petty, actually measured things out, talked with folks how the spaces are being used now. And my intention had been to communicate people rather than specifically wheelchairs last month, so I apologize, that was unclear. And so the ideal scenario is the ability to have 10 minimum people in that space, which the test fit does allow, but also the flexibility for other permutations of folks who are coming in. What we are in fact seeing most recently since the pandemic is folks predominantly coming using walkers. And while there are a handful of folks who want to sit in their walker that has an attached seat, actually the majority of them, it's the example Richard gave, they want the security of one of our chairs. And so it's access to our chair on a mobility accessible platform more so. So I want to emphasize it's not explicitly wheelchairs that does come up, but it's less frequent. And so looking at having the ability for a minimum of 10 people across and the ability for them to maneuver in there more easily, that's what the minimum ideal is.
And that's what we have with this test fit 1.
Correct. Yeah.
so you think test fit 1 is adequate? We don't need to go to test fit 2.
If I understand the design process, we'll still figure out the specifics next if the board opts to move forward with the project. But I'm very comfortable based on how we're using the auditorium now and we envision to use the auditorium, that a version of test fit 1 that ticks those boxes would meet the needs that we're seeing from the community.
You can use the outside space.
In particular, given you can use the outside space as well.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Because that really opens up a number of people benefit from our program.
Here,
I have a follow-up question. So again, I'm very excited about the possibilities for that outside space. Are those fees in this
proposal?
If you look at the AV contractor,
Right,
that's the AV packet, upgrade package that Amy was talking about.
It's inclusive of that.
got you, okay.
And that would need to be bid out, right? So we're hoping for actually better numbers than what you're seeing in the budget, but these are kind of conservative estimates for construction and AV contractors. Hopefully, we have a good bid day and we've had good bid days with this team of Andrew and SMC, so we're hoping that the same applies for this project and we'll end up actually having some really good numbers.
So again, to be clear, this projected total,
Right.
this includes everything we're
Yes.
talking about.
Yes,
Right, and it might end up, as you said, after the bidding process, the cost could be less.
if possible, yes.
Okay.
I mean, the third floor project ended up lower than what we initially kind of greenlit it for, so.
Does this also mean that, sorry, this is obvious, but does this also mean that this is what the max it would cost or it will cost?
Well, so this is kind of giving approval. What I'm asking for is approval, given these projections, to move forward with the process.
Got it.
But the numbers won't actually be known until after the bids.
Okay.
When those numbers are provided, I would be shocked if they were above, obviously, but it's certainly possible. It does happen,
Yeah.
sometimes in bid situations, but that's where so I've heard. And at that point, we would have to have another discussion before actually moving forward. Is the board comfortable with the new number and the new budget kind of configuration, the structure of the budget, or do we just pause this project? So,
Can you go over the projected timeline again? 'Cause I know last meeting we talked about we're
Yeah.
condensing it and just doing it over a shorter period of time, if I recall.
we want to accomplish completion of this project in from June through August,
Okay.
because that's actually because of the availability of outdoor spaces and the nature of programming that happens in the summer months. That's the actual window that makes most sense for us, where it wouldn't take away as much opportunity for us and our patrons. If we are in the winter months and the fall months, we have the Young Steinway series, we have a lot of films, we have a lot of indoor programs, and we wouldn't want to take on this project in those heavy use months, So the summer months actually would kind of have less impact on the public. The other seasons. And that's why kind of the paragraph where we say, well, prepare the documents no later than X, and have the bid no later than this date, and have the bids ready to be presented in the April board meeting in 3 months. It's with the intent to really get this into high gear if the board approves moving forward.
I have a question. Maybe Amy, you can talk a little bit about it, and maybe I missed it at some point, but just in your research in how the space is being utilized and patrons that are using it, was there any investigation into like children with special needs or our, multilingual learners, and how we can make sure that we are designing it in a way that's going to be successful for those patrons?
Yes, so starting with children and families with children with disabilities, we've been kind of soft piloting some things for the last few months as well, having sensory friendly film screenings where we're modifying how bright the lights are so that there's still a bit of light, different like noise levels, and that's been really well received. And in fact, all of our family movies starting in March are going to be sensory friendly. We're not going to differentiate because we're getting the feedback that that's just really felt as supportive to everyone. Yeah, universal design. I wouldn't call ours right now universal design because we are limited in our ability to refine the amount of light and where it's at. So again, pieces that are inclusive of the AV package part of this would allow us more of that ability to refine for the specific audience. In terms of folks for whom English is not their, spoken or read language, the the AV we've explored would perhaps allow different types of captions. We need to explore that a little bit more, and some of that is a software solution that would actually just be part of later, like regular operating budget with IT. But that's one of the things that we've tried to factor in as well. What are the different places you can look to get information so that you can enjoy the experience, and making sure that that's hooked up intentionally so that there's no time delay, that we have options, flexibility. It could be the sort of thing, again, after the fact where it's software with a hardware component of, say, iPads, things like that. That's when we get a little bit more into our process as opposed to the specific renovation.
Is there, and I know that you would use, a contact for when you were designing, the first floor for the children's food area, is that something that you brought in somebody to kind of talk about that, as opposed to just like families, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Just somebody else that had a different kind of perspective, yes.
Not yet.
Okay.
I imagine that would be a piece of the design conversation.
Because I didn't know if there was anything structural to consider if and when you, to integrate that into the budget. That's
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
rationale.
I don't know specifically from like an accessibility consultant perspective, but from what we learned in the public space renovation and then what we've heard from families coming to some of these events is things that we already have, making sure that there are still railings, like clearly lit steps, the variety of options right now we have with like the flat platform at the very front of the stage, that works really well for some folks too. The amount of space is important so they can have some distance. So anecdotally, as opposed to consultant.
I mean, I would love to see that kind of investigated further in case I just want to, if we're going to invest this kind of time and money into it, we've done that full investigation and we've gotten the experts in. If there's anything that we've overlooked, or there's a situation out there that we're not aware of, and, kind of what the trends are moving forward as well.
We can definitely do that, and just to kind of use the context of what our previous renovation projects look like. After the board gives us kind of the okay to move forward on the design phase and the construction documents, bidding. A lot of conversations take place after that. So for the first and second floor was with staff and the public. And for the third floor was obviously with a lot of more conversations with the staff for the office spaces. And then for this, it would be assumed staff and the public health conversations. So.
And those conversations also would be inclusive of the consultants who would be working with us. So in the case of the Petty, there would be the lighting designer and the AV and IT designer. And they're going to bring a lot of the improvements for the Petty will be through the integration of better lighting, much better lighting, much better AV and acoustics. And part of what will make it better is there'll be more control. So Skokie, Amy, her team can experiment or preset the lighting in various ways, depending on the audience, depending on the event. That flexibility and control is going to be very important to making that a good space, and a good space for many different scenarios and different types of people and different needs. Right now, the space is very limited in terms of lighting. And it's just it's no longer kind of acceptable given the reach and the performance of what Skokie does here. So, I bring that up mostly because I came in showing some spatial drawings, but the improvements are really way beyond the spatial. It's the spatial, the lighting, the acoustics, all of that together, technology.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. I was just like scrolling through some things and it just made me think of things I hadn't even thought of before, like if you are visually impaired, how do you enjoy an experience? And this article here is talking about how people have earpieces and then someone describing a performance to them. Like that's not something I would have thought of, but someone who's visually impaired, or maybe someone who uses ASL to communicate. Like how do we become really inclusive of those experiences as well? So I was like, oh, it's a really good question,
And I want to emphasize, those are all accommodations that we can offer upon request now.
How do patrons do that now? So when they register for an event, is it something where they reach out to our engagement team ahead of time to request those accommodations, or how does that
Yes.
work? Okay.
Yes, so it is a footer on every event that appears on our online calendar that has a brief description and link and phone number to be able to request accommodations.
That data could also be very helpful if we look at that historically to understand when we're planning for the future, like what types of requests have we gotten, how common are they? Do we see any trends with that? I think that could be really useful too.
Yeah.
I got a quick question. I haven't been to the petty in a minute, but I remember as a kid, like sitting on the floor and like listening to story time and stuff. Is there space, or is that still something that happens where people can sit on the floor, or is that like not a thing?
At the front of the.
Yeah, there is still
In front of the
space.
stage? Okay.
So the 3 rows closest to the stage, that's all on the same level.
Oh, okay.
And again, you can do that with the sight lines because you're so close to the stage, you
Got it.
can see over the person's head. We don't do story times in there because we have much better spaces to do that. But what we will do when we have particular bands that we know folks like to dance to, we'll remove those 3 rows of chairs and we'll have people dance. On the
Oh,
floor.
that's cool. Okay.
The mosh pit.
We haven't had that yet, but the whole point is to expand our options, right?
That's definitely, I'm gonna just jump in. You're gonna catch me on this.
Acoustically, are you putting anything up on the walls or ceiling? Is that changing at all?
Well, that's,
That's up to the AV.
yes, I expect the answer to that is yes. Is particularly in the ceiling. To put in some absorptive materials, and that's something we've done through the library in general, added a lot of acoustical materials, not here it's visible on the walls, but often within the library, it's not really visible. And I think we'll be doing that there.
I think the AV consultant discussed that over our call.
Yeah, and Richard mentioned the hearing loop. In your introductory remarks, I just want to reinvestigate or re-discuss that. The hearing loop is a copper coil that is put in under the carpeting. And it allows for people with hearing aids to connect wirelessly and get reinforced sound. And that exists in this space and in a number of other spaces that we've already renovated within the library. So that would be added to.
But I think the AV person last time said in addition to the hearing cords, the Bluetooth.
Yes.
So we added that into capability to work off your phones, your hearing.
When they start
Yeah.
designing it in more detail, I'm sure they'll factor all that in. Yeah, that's currently the only program one where we don't have the hearing, so because we haven't touched it.
Other questions, comments?
Just wonderful again to hear the flexibility that we can take out those first 3 rows, that we can make a place if we have a dancing type of event. I think I mentioned to you, Amy and Richard, when I got back from my trip to Norway in September, being the library lover that I am, on Friday night, we went to the main library in Oslo, and they were having a takeover of 5 floors of the library. They were putting in stages, having massive technology, AV equipment, and we're going to have bands on every floor. So I'm just saying, wow, that was like a revelation to me. Like, how often do you all do this? They're like, yeah, this is like a cool regular that we do. And, you know, so how wonderful to have that kind of opportunity for music and dance. And I'm not quite sure what a mosh pit is, so I don't know if I know.
You know.
To demonstrate.
Yeah.
I just see injuries and, you know, so.
All right, then, there's no further comments, Chris. Can I have a motion to approve the Petty Auditorium upgrade, the projected cost of $998,061, no cents.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mary?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Ella? Yeah. Mira?
Yes.
And that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Still related to that.
Yes. This next one's important to Andrew.
Absolutely. And to us,
The
Andrew.
architectural fee proposal. Andrew, anything you want to add to it? It's not necessary, but
No, but it can answer any questions if.
questions or comments about that? Not gonna have a motion to approve the architectural fee proposal from Andrew Berman Architect, the total cost of $63,000.
So. Second.
Seconded. We need individual votes. Mira,
Yes.
Ella,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Michelle,
Yes.
Amanda. Mary.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. And then the construction management fee proposal on page 88.
Josh, are you still
I think Josh is on the call.
He's in there?
John, anything you wanna point out?
Can you remove the- I know Josh is, oh, there he is, okay.
Hey, how we doing, everybody?
Yeah.
there? Josh?
I'm on my phone. I apologize. I'm not on the screen. I don't think I have anything to add, but happy to answer any questions.
Josh.
Okay, any questions for John? If not, can I have a motion to approve construction management fee proposal for SMC at a total cost of $163,321? Second? All in favor, Mary,
Yes.
Amanda, Michelle,
Yes.
Ella? Yeah. Mira?
Yes.
That passes unanimously again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, everyone.
Exciting.
So we'll be busy for this spring, and then we're all having the summer.
Yeah.
And then we're done.
Good thing we'll have the new children.
And Richard, excellent planning, which you described about the timeframe, of course, excellent strategic planning of that.
I wish I could say it was all intentional, but it just kind of fell into place that
Yes,
way, so honestly,
very good.
so it worked out. And Laura and I will need a little bit of break on construction projects.
We hope we're good for a while, right?
I think we should.
Well.
Yeah. Be the heavy of other ones.
All right, any other business then? Comments from trustees?
I just want to say thank you so much for all your hard work on the petty, proposal, because I know that was a lot of thought, time and effort that took into getting that up and rolling, and that's been something that's been on our list of things in conjunction with third floor. I mean, there's been a lot, everybody relocating the different places. So thank you so much for all the work that you put into it, and I am very excited to see the the recognition, the staff recognition.
Yeah,
So
very positive.
thank you for that, and congrats, and thank you to all of our recognized members of the staff.
Yes.
Really.
And I'm so delighted about the petty improvements. I'm always so happy when I hear patron comments about the renovation of the library as a whole. And I'm already imagining how happy people are going to be with all these improvements in the auditorium, hearing all the flexibility, hearing all the different things we're already envisioning to customize for different events. I think people are really going to enjoy it and appreciate it.
That'd be great.
Yes.
Yeah,
Excellent.
for many years.
Yes. Very good.
So we're way ahead of schedule, and you guys are available for a tour. Board member wants to do that after we done. I'd be interested. Well, anybody else interested?
I feel like I got a pretty good
So-
plan,
And we'll do it again in, the before when, okay, okay, yeah, well, we can take, then we don't have to actually say anything.
Hey, motion to adjourn?
So.
All in favor?